Good afternoon, Narvi family, and to my dynamic transition team members. What I'm going to do today is go through our presentation to kind of talk about what we've been doing all year, which is focusing on our fifth grade transition students and the achievement in English and language arts. In the introduction, I plan to provide the background, context, purpose, and talk about how we organized and implemented our plan. So what is a transition student? DeKalb County school system uses the label transition students for those students who did not score adequately on the Georgia milestones in third grade. For third grade English language arts, we know that was through the Lexile score. So these students did not make a high enough Lexile score. However, with transition students, they were placed in fourth grade with the notion that we would provide extra additional academic support. The goal, of course, was to close that gap, but at Narvi, 98% of our students who were in transitions did not meet the minimum scores on Georgia milestones during their fourth grade year, and their NWEA MAP scores did not reflect that they had mastered those standards in fourth grade either. Okay, so this is third grade and fourth grade where they have not been successful, most of them, in the area of English language arts. We fast forward to 2019, 2020. Our students are now currently in fifth grade this school year. And so our team came together with the purpose to figure out how we would increase the student achievement in fifth grade transition students in the area of English language arts. How do we organize the study? Once we came together, the first thing we did was review that benchmark data. We started actually in August with the first administration of benchmark and map. We then came back together, of course, in December to assess the mastery of standards and determine a reteaching plan and develop it. In addition, we looked at our winter NWEA MAP administration scores and determined the projected level of proficiency on the Georgia milestones. And of course, that would have been taken this month. After we got all of the data, we analyzed it. And we use that to identify trends, successes, and identify deficits that persisted. In addition, we use the NWEA learning continuum to identify the specific needs of those students to kind of group and begin differentiating accordingly. Last but not least, we met monthly to discuss the progress of all of these students and even had to restart the process once we looked at the effects of the recommended interventions. Our recommended steps for implementation. We implemented the transition team data talks where we used the Atlas looking at data protocol to help guide our data talks and analyze that data to determine the implementation and for teaching and assessment. In addition, our student benchmark assessments as well as the MAP assessments were analyzed during our data talks along with work samples as needed. And as a team, we worked together to determine how we would use that data to drive the instruction. In addition, we also provided additional academic support for our students through the MTSS process. Each transition student was placed in the RTI Tier 2 intervention, and they received intervention specifically in the area of reading comprehension. We did this 2 times per week minimum for a total of at least 40 minutes per week. In addition to the interventions, they also were mandated to attend the after-school extended day tutorial sessions. This was small group tutorial sessions used to address deficits and practice skills based on teacher observations, the teacher's perspective, and the student work that was displayed. In March, we used this time for Georgia milestones preparation in the area of English and language arts. Our dynamic transition team included the fifth grade ELA and social studies teachers, our administrators, academic coach, instructional support specialist, our RTI chair, as well as our special ed department chair. Our special ed students, of course, were not in the MTSS process because they already have individualized education plans and are receiving services. However, we wanted to make sure we included her just to make sure we're doing all that we can for our special ed students who were not successful as well. We want them to be successful too. Our research questions, we're going to look at the educator impact as well as the student impact. For educators, what are the effects of implementing RTI interventions to improve achievement scores in ELA in fifth grade transition students? And for our student impact, What are the effects of attending those extended day tutorial sessions to improve the achievement scores? We reviewed 3 research-based literature sources. The first article was entitled Intensive Intervention Practice Guide, and it talked about applying the RTI process and interventions for secondary students who struggle in the area of reading comprehension. We chose this article because our students too struggle in the area of reading comprehension, but also because although we are elementary school, these are 5th grade students. And so next year they will be going into middle school. So we wanted to use some of the guidelines that were presented in this article to help us guide our process to not only prepare them for 5th grade, but to also get them prepared for what's to come in middle school. According to the article, the primary focus of RTI begins to shift from middle school to secondary. So it should shift from identifying the issue to intensely treating that difficulty. And so our students have been in the RTI process for a minimum of about 3 years. The shift has been made to treat the difficulties because now we are directly impacting that reading comprehension issue. We've already identified what the problem is with our students, and now we're doing everything we can to attack that. In addition, it also talks about using achievement scores rather than their response to interventions to determine their RTI levels. And when they're in lower grades, we don't really have anything to go off of other than the MAP assessment. However, now that they are in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we can use the Georgia milestones, we can use benchmarks, as well as the MAP assessment to determine where they should be in the RTI process. Suggested RTI framework alterations as students transition from lower to middle grades is an increased emphasis on comprehension strategies. And again, the intervention that we chose did just that. It provided multiple strategies that we could use to help them comprehend text. The second article was entitled Say Goodbye to Drill and Kill Teaching, and it talked about using authentic and providing authentic reading and writing experiences for our students. With this article, we definitely utilized it a lot in the extended day tutorial for our transition students. We wanted to make sure we brought in enough sources where they were able to go over those comprehension issues and kind of deal with that, as well as being authentic and making sure it's true active learning. The third article deals with providing teacher candidates experience in data teams and actually analyzing that literacy data. A critical component of analyzing data involves working in collaborative partnerships, which we know. So of course, we did form this data team to provide that collaborative partnership that was discussed in this article. We, of course, review constantly and use this data to guide that small group instruction as well. And the article stressed using a variety of assessment data, and we've done just that as well. We've used our benchmark data, Georgia milestones data, RTI intervention progress monitoring data, as well as our MAP data to ensure we're making informed instructional decisions. In addition, this article also provided some guiding questions. And so what we chose to do was to adopt the Atlas Looking at Data protocol, which we talked about a little bit earlier in the presentation, to guide our conversation and just ensure that we are addressing all aspects to make sure we do what we need to for our students. Methods, procedures, and our analysis. So talking about that Atlas Looking at Data protocol, some of the guiding questions were, what do we see? What does the data suggest? What are some assumptions? And what are our implications for teaching and assessment? Looking at our benchmark data, our benchmarks are created by DeKalb County and they're kept in a portal called Illuminate. So what we do after each benchmark, when we come together, we pull that data from the Illuminate portal. We first compare the student data to all 5th grade students to see how they fared. And then we disaggregate that data and we look at it based on question and then determine which standards the question addressed. And from that, we're able to develop a plan that we can use to strategically attack those issues and those deficits where the students did not understand. Georgia milestone scores, of course, were retrieved and analyzed from their third and fourth grade years. We determined domain deficits, and we identified how close a student was to becoming a developing learner. We also looked at the NWEA MAP data. We looked at the fall and winter administrations and compared them. In addition, we used the learning continuum to identify the specific deficit areas of each student. And last but not least, we used those MAP scores to make projections for how students would do on the 2020 Georgia Milestone Score. So what were our findings? 25% of our transition students showed an increase in Georgia Milestones performance bands. That means going from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, so on and so forth, from third grade to fourth grade. 25% were also projected to increase a Georgia Milestones performance band this year on the Georgia Milestones administration. 83% of our transition students were projected to demonstrate growth on the MAP assessment that was offered in the winter. I am pleased to say that we exceeded that goal. 93% of our students actually showed growth, so that was awesome. 100% of students who are not special ed or exceptional ed are currently in the RTI process, of course, and that is showing to be helpful. And all students demonstrated growth according to the progress monitoring weekly from that implementation in the RTI. As we take a look at our 3-year ELA trend, and we've already talked about this, there was definitely a deficit. Students who did not understand in third grade and did not master those standards, when they came to fourth grade, they still did not master it. So our goal this year was to stop that and make sure we drilled down to exactly what the issue was to make sure they're able to be successful. In third grade for these students, level 1 was 56.5%, who scored level 1 on the retest. Level 2 was 39%, and level 3 was 4%. In fourth grade, from these same students, 15 of them were in the beginning learner area. However, 5 of them were developing. Our goal this year was hopefully to see at least half of them become developing. Just to give us a picture of district-wide versus Georgia, you can see where DeKalb County fares, as well as Narvi J. Harris. So our next steps, what do we plan to do with this information that we have now? For our rising sixth grade students, although our current fifth grade scholars, the year was cut short, we don't want to leave them hanging. So we met last week to close out our RTI plans, and what we decided is that we will extend their RTI plans to follow them so that they can receive MTSS support in middle school so they can still be successful. And for our rising fifth grade students, we're going to follow the same plan. But because Georgia Milestones was canceled due to COVID-19, we're going to use the MAP scores from winter and the new scores when we come back in the fall to determine students who we will consider to be transition, and we will go through this entire process again with them. The goal is to identify more students earlier so that we can make an impact, not just for fifth grade students, but so that we can positively impact all students at Narvi J. Harris. Again, thank you so much for working with me as we worked to make sure these fifth graders were successful. I wish you the best. Thanks.